Welcome to Jain Neuroscience Lab. In this experiment, we wanted to find out the impact of emotion on decision making. And this especially in the field of finance. Now this field is supposed to be a very rational field, very number oriented. So we took some financial statement, and within this statement we inserted images. Now these images were calibrated to trigger a certain emotional response. So we used images that had either a negative valence triggering emotions such as anger, disgust, or contempt, or we used some images that were just not neutral, triggering no emotional response. And we also used images triggering positive emotional responses, such as joy, happiness, excitement. This is what we did. And then we asked the respondent, well, focus on the number and tell us your willingness to extend a credit line to this company on a 1 to 5 scale.
Hi, I'm here. So for this experiment, we chose 30 respondents, nearly 21 years in age to 47 years in age. The respondents were split almost evenly according to gender. All of our respondents were recent financial experts, and all of them had global exposure. Ideally, all of them should have given these companies credit line extensions basis the financial data they were seeing. We used a survey to record our respondents' willingness to extend or not extend credit to these companies basis the financial data. While our respondents were analyzing this data, we measured their emotional responses as well as their engagement and attention levels.
All right, so this is what we are doing here. We are measuring, and here is connected by the way to the system. So we are measuring, this is an eye tracker. So it measures where the respondent is looking, but it also measures the pupil, dilatation of the pupil, which is linked to engagement and attention. We also measure with a little camera here, we measure facial detection, and facial detection can be transcribed into emotions, so happiness, sadness, contempt, anger, and so on. So you see the bunch of points in the face, this analyze the different emotion. At the bottom here you see, this is a galvanic skin response. Now it basically measures your skin conductance. Now you can see here, these are the different variation of the skin, and it's very, very sensitive to emotion. So a tiny little emotion will change. So for example, here we see that maybe there was an influx of emotion and this was recorded by the system. So your skin is basically a mirror of your emotional state, conscious but as well as unconscious. So the system generated a lot of data. Basically emotional data. So for each respondent, we had data about sadness, anger, joy, contempt, surprise, engagement, and attention. Now what we did is we tried to correlate this data with the willingness to extend credit to a company. So if you remember, it was on a 1 to 5 scale. Now for women, we found no correlation. You can see here that the p-value is greater than 0.05, sorry. Okay, now for male, the results were different. We found a p-value that was less than 0.05, and you can see the number here, 0.02, meaning that there is a correlation between the variable measuring emotion and the willingness to extend a credit line. We found that sadness and surprise were the two variables that impact and are correlated, and they are negatively correlated because you can see a negative sign here to the decision to extend credit or not. So the more sad or the more surprised a respondent felt, the less likely this respondent will be to give a credit to a company. So that's a very interesting finding. So what do we conclude from this experiment? Is finance a completely irrational field? Well, it is not. At least for men, it is not. We saw that emotional stimulus will tend to affect the outcome of the decision. We found that negative emotion will tend to reduce the probability for respondents to provide credit to a company. And on the other hand, positive stimulus, so positive emotion generated by this image, will tend to increase the probability for the respondent to extend credit to a company. Now that was for male. For female, we found no correlation. So possibly we can conclude, and I think this experiment needs to be extended maybe to more respondents. But at this level, now we could conclude that women seem to be more rational, so less impacted by emotion when they make a decision, at least in this field for this financial experiment. It was great to have you on board at the SP Jain Neuroscience Lab, and we'll see you again for another experiment.